welcome to Rough Cut Film Review, back after the festive period. I trust you enjoyed yourselves. This has actually been lined up and ready to go for well over a week, but unfortunately festive apathy has set in, and apologies, I just couldn't summon the energy to record this. So this is the review of Anchorman 2. The review of the Middle Hobbit film is also lined up and ready to go, so that will be there with you shortly, so to speak. So Anchorman, well, certainly for me, Will Ferrell's best film, certainly his best comedy, and if I think about it, it's probably one of my favourite comedies of all time. I've seen it many times, and it has an unusually high joke hit rate, you know, the number of jokes that actually work and work really well. It's really quotable. Some of the stuff around Baxter the dog didn't quite work for me, but the jokes do keep coming, and as I say, a lot of them do land, and I really, really feel very warmly to that film indeed. It also walks a really fine line between the characters being arrogant buffoons and actually rather sweet. You know, it's a fine line, and they walk it really rather well. So, getting on a decade on, we have the sequel to what is, for me, as I've said, a modern classic. First thing for me to say is it's the same director. It's long-term Farrell collaborator Adam McKay, who, while he may not be the finest director in the world, he certainly earned his comedy chops and basically seems to let Farrell get on with the business of making people laugh. Although it has to be said that some of their efforts, like the previously reviewed The Other Guys, probably should have worked but didn't quite in execution, so they haven't exactly got a faultless record, but still. Now, I think one of the things that really works in Anchorman 2's favour is the fact that they really haven't rushed in with the sequel. They've really taken their time and thought about what it is that they wanted to do with the sequel, and in that regard I really applaud them. And it's really remarkable the sheer number of actors from the first film who reprise their roles in this, whether it's like someone like Steve Carell, who's gone on to be a really big star, or some of the minor characters like Garth, for example, coming back in there again. Very few of the cast, and I have seen the first one many times, very few of them that I can remember were missing from the sequel. It was lovely to have these little nods to, even if it was just a very, very quick scene with them, and it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but still. What's interesting actually is just how noticeably older a lot of them look, and it did make me wonder what on earth have been doing for the last decade. It's really rather scary. So anyway, on with the plot. So we start off loosely in the place that Anchorman 1 ended at. So that is Ron Burgundy and his now wife Veronica Corningstone working as national news anchors. Ron then gets a bit of news that's not great. He reacts to it rather badly in a manner in which you could imagine Ron Burgundy might react to it, and suddenly he finds himself estranged from Veronica and his son, who he has a difficult relationship with, but basically we have an excuse all these years on to reassemble the old news team and to get into the kind of hijinks that were so effective and funny in the first film. The plot here is really rather incidental, but we do get some nice touches. So we have the rise of CNN and the more sort of action-orientated news, as well as a Murdoch-type Aussie media mogul. It has to be said that some of the jokes do work better than others, and some of the themes work better than others. And ultimately, much like the first one really, this film is all over the place. There's certainly a lack of focus here caused by the reputation of the first film, meaning the sequel is trying to be all things to all people, and certainly this causes problems in terms of being a single piece of work. However, there's also a comedy in the random chaos that this film throws up. So we have the Anchorman battle here again, bigger and better than it was ever in the first one. We have Burgundy nursing a shark like a baby, and while a fair bit of the weird and far out there stuff that didn't work, there's enough in there that makes me glad that they didn't just retread the first one, because there's sort of two things going on here. One is a retread, and two is the new stuff, and they're really not afraid to try random stuff in the sequel. They're not entirely tethered to the first film, so that's good. I mean, you can really take that as lazy or not. There are lots and lots of nods and winks to the first film, so you could accuse them of being lazy, or you could say that it's a loving homage, and whether you feel kindly to the film or not is probably which side of the fence you'll come down at. Having implied some level of laziness, I'd also say that it's apparent that everyone is working really, really super hard to make you laugh. The cast clearly really wants to make this work, Farrell chief among them, and it seems that if a gag isn't quite working, as there are a number of gags in this that doesn't quite work, it seems the harder he'll work at it and the more he'll work at it to try and make it work. And there was a few things where it feels like he was really trying to get that square peg into that round hole really, really hard, and you've got to applaud him for the time and the effort. Ultimately for me, this film will not be remembered as the classic that the first one rightly is. It simply isn't as quotable, but having said that, for the most part, it made me laugh. And the most part, the jokes worked, and I certainly laughed in the cinema. It's enjoyable. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you're a fan of the first. It's not quite up there, but it's far closer than I ever thought they'd get. Kind regards, Christopher Thomas.